Thank you, Mr. Bennett. We truly do have remarkable children here in Massapequa. Children that are talented, motivated, compassionate, as demonstrated by the children at Lockhart that fundraised for Make-A-Wish. The students that you saw up on stage performing Oliver. Some other information with regard to just how wonderful the students are that we are educating in Massapequa and that you are bringing to us. Just some notes that I have that Mr. Piripato shared with me from several board meetings ago when we had so many students receive athletic awards. Massapequa has won the New York State Public High School Athletic Association School of Distinction 4 out of 5 years. And all 30 varsity teams, this is really where athletics and education meet. All 30 varsity teams had a 90-point grade point average or better the entire 2013-14 year. So how many students are on 30 varsity teams? And each one of those students had a 90-point grade point average or better. Just absolutely phenomenal. Each of our 11 fall 2013 varsity teams also earned New York State Public High School Athletic Association Team Scholar Awards, again having an average of 90% or better. This past year was one of the finest sports seasons in Massapequa. Over 60 Massapequa student athletes earned honors at all Long Island events, all county events, all conference events, all division, all class, scholar athletes in their respective sports for the fall 2013 season. I could go on and on and on. I think it's just fitting that I start off an instructional presentation with just some of the tremendous, and again, just hitting the tip of the iceberg to how well our students do. Thank you, though, for coming to this budget presentation. It is the second budget presentation that the school district is having. Our first budget presentation was on the general support section of the budget. And quite honestly, the achievements of our students couldn't occur without a goal and vision by the superintendent and our Board of Education. And those goals and visions then are implemented in our schools by a professional building-based administrative team and a professional team of teachers in all of our schools who are never satisfied with the status quo. They're continuing to self-evaluate and assess, and in places where we need to improve, we make the changes to improve and learn from where we've been. It's a combination of where school and community provides the outstanding men and women that graduate from our high school. So, with that, opening the instructional budget presentation and getting into some of the numbers, let me just give you a background as to how the school district spends its resources on over a broad basis. As you would expect, we spend nearly 80% of our resources in student programs, followed up by making sure that our facilities and capital improvements are up to par, 13.2%, and then 7.6% on the administrative operations of the school district. Fairly typical of what a school district in New York State spends in those respective areas. The next slide is a slide that I presented in the first budget presentation. But with all the student achievement and great things that are occurring in this district, we are actually educating students at a cost when you compare to the other 41 K-12 Long Island or Nassau County school systems that are covered there. We're actually doing it at a cost that's about $3,000 less than the median school district in Nassau County. About $3,500 less. If you were to take our enrollment this year and multiply it by that gap, our budget would be almost $26 million higher. So we're actually educating students in a very cost-effective manner in Massapequa. If you look at some of the other larger districts in Nassau County, which I have the data in front of me, let's look at the East Meadow School District. They spend about $1,300 or more per student. So if you were to do the math, again, on a per student basis, our budget would need to be $9.8 million higher if we spend what East Meadow spends. How about the Uniondale School District that spends about $1,500 more per student? Again, doing the math, we would spend about $11.2 million more in our budget at that level. So you quickly get a sense, and you can see by the chart, that we are educating students outstanding way and doing it in a cost-effective way. The next chart is our administrative costs on general support spending disaggregated from the total compared to the other 41 K-12 school districts in Nassau County. And you can see that from a general support standpoint, which includes central office administration and the general support section of the budget, we're about where the fifth lowest in Nassau County. So again, in that area, we're doing things very cost effectively. The next slide is, again, for your information. It has to do with our enrollments and where we're projecting our enrollments to be going. In the current year, we're at 7,401 students. And then for 2014, we have done an enrollment survey. And so for 2014, we're anticipated to drop by about 187 students. For 2015, an additional 119 students. And in the 2016 year, by an additional 139 students. Getting just under 7,000, we're anticipating in the 2016-17 school year. Common trend amongst Long Island, many districts losing enrollment because of the live births being down considerably from where they were several years ago. Just gives you a perspective as to where we see the enrollments going over the next couple of years. This slide, basically I want to just give you an understanding on a broad sense as to how our budget is put together and how it's developed. So the slide that you have in front of you, there's a black bar that runs across. Above the black bar are the expenses of the school system in the current year in various categories. In February 6th, we covered the general support area up on top, and the other areas such as fuel, transportation, community services, employee benefits, debt service, special education transfer, and tax sociality payment. Those were explained and gone over at the February 6th budget. Tonight is the instructional part of the budget. So between the areas that were workshop on February 6th and tonight, March 6th, that will cover the entire spending of the school district budget. Below this line has to do with the revenue. And on March 20th, we'll have another budget workshop to talk about the revenue or what funds those expenditures. Things such as the tax levy, local revenue, which includes rentals that the school district gets, income from rentals, state aid, and the use of our reserves and fund balance, said a little bit differently, the use of our savings accounts in funding those expenditures. Again, just an overview of our budget. These are some of the things in the budget that's is being proposed both in the last session and this session. Some changes that I just want to bring to light, and some drivers, so to speak, for the budget for 2014-15. First at the top is pension costs. This is an area over the last couple of years for all school districts and municipalities in New York State that has been increasing at a very significant rate. It's an area that's actually a mandate to school systems and municipalities in that New York State says that if a person works for a school district, you must make them a member, or they must be afforded the opportunity to be a member of either the employee's retirement system or the teacher's retirement system, and that's the BEQA. And then that gets funded by a rate that comes to us each year from the respective retirement systems that then gets multiplied times the salary, and that determines what the contribution is. This year, the rate has gone from 16.25% to 17.25%, just under a 10% increase. Last year at this time, we were looking at a 37% increase, and that's an increase that actually got implemented this year. So while the amount that we anticipate that it's going to add to the budget this year, 1.7 million, is certainly what anyone would consider a large amount. It's actually significantly less than the amount last year that we had to add to the budget. Again, it was a 37% increase. But again, pension costs are a driver. We've taken some efforts to reduce costs in the school system. Health insurance, actually, the premiums came in lower than we had anticipated this year. So going forward into the 2014-15 budget, we're able to reduce health insurance by approximately $177,000 in the new budget. Something that we've done and taken an initiative in is reducing our utility costs, fuel, oil, electric, and gas usage. We've converted just about all of our buildings to fire on natural gas, and the lighting upgrades and other improvements have saved on electricity. So we're able to take $225,000 out of our budget as a result of energy savings. Contracted transportation. About 2 years ago, we hired a routing expert and a transportation director, and she has been able to streamline our transportation system and the way that we transport students, maintaining or bettering the quality of service, and we're able to take an additional $160,000 out of the transportation fund this year. District photocopying, we negotiated a new contract with Nassau BOCES, and because of some technology improvements and implementation in the school district, we're copying less, so we should be copying less. So we're able to take $45,000 out of the budget. Unemployment insurance, we anticipate that we will not need the unemployment insurance provisions in the budget to the extent that we have needed them over the last 2 years. So we're able to take $150,000 out of the budget. Principal and interest on bonds. Basically, that is a bond that is being paid off that pertains to the Massachusetts Public Library that the school district is responsible for paying on the expenditure side, and that is maturing, and that's coming out of the budget. This one, tax note interest. That refers to interest that the school district has been paying or pays on a tax anticipation note, something that we need to borrow to fund our operations before taxes and state aid are received. And I'm very pleased to report that we're able to take that amount out of the budget in its entirety, in that we have built a sufficient amount of fund balance and reserve accounts to get us through cash flow periods during July, August, and September. In fact, when I started in the school district 15 years ago, the district was spending about $425,000 in interest costs associated with that tax anticipation note. So for the short term and the long term, we will not have to pay interest for a cash flow borrowing note. And finally, tax certiorari. About 3 years ago, unilaterally, Nassau County changed the way that they make the refund when someone agrees their taxes and the county agrees that they've made an error in their assessment. The county basically shifted the responsibility of paying for those costs to local school districts, which many believe was unfair. It was challenged in court, and the school districts won. It's been appealed twice now, and in each appeal, the school districts have prevailed and won. So we're able to take $1.5 million out of that line for tax certiorari's, which is a real good thing for us and other districts in Nassau County. So those are some of the more significant changes outside of the instructional area. Okay, so now let's get to the instructional. The instructional budget has been available online since Monday under the school agenda. And at this point in the presentation, I'd like to ask the school board if they have any questions on the instructional budget. Typically, we do it line by line and page by page. There are 5 pages with regard to this budget, so I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have regarding the instructional budget.
Mr. Adcock?
I have some questions on the staff. Can you first comment on staff compared?
FTEs, the FTE means full-time equivalents of staff that are in those respective lines. With regards to the FTEs, they're the only FTE that is different from what was represented last year at this time is in line 68 clerical salaries. We had made a provision in the budget for the current year to access 2 clerical employees. The district actually wound up accessing 1 clerical employee. So represented there last year was 30 FTEs because we had planned to access 2, and there was only 1 was accessed, so there's 31 there now, which is down actually by 1. And the increase that you see in that line, represents that additional employee that was not accessed.
Because it seems like a large increase of 7.25.
Well, it would be because one person's salary could be in the $50,000 range, plus a normal increase, you know, a provision for contractual increase as well for the remaining 30 people that are there.
Okay, and on line 67, the principal, that's contractual.
Yes.
And I just have one more question on line 74 on the BOCES in service. The $75,000.
Yes,
Are
with-
we doing more in-house?
Basically, I think we're all familiar with the APPR regulations that kicked in and the training associated. There was a significant amount of training associated with the APPR implementation. Administrators had to, mandatory thing that they had to be trained. The reason that there's a reduction of 75,000 is because that training has already occurred. It occurred last year and somewhat this year and the year before, so we don't need that 75,000 in there as a result of already training already occurring for the APPR process.
Okay, you don't anticipate any new initiatives being brought down by the state? That would go
Well,
on.
that is a, you know, the old knowing mandates. I can't guarantee that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just one quick question. I noticed on line 66, the curriculum development from BOCES and the implementation.
Yes.
Why is that such a drop? I'm concerned, does that have anything to do with less training in the trades or anything like that?
No,
That affected at all?
basically, the reason for that decrease has to do with primarily to do with less new course offerings that the school district is anticipating, and that we had less new course offerings, so the curriculum and the development associated with new course offerings is representative of that decrease.
Right, thank you. Mrs. Fisher? Any other questions on this page? For
Are
Don?
we going back page?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't.
Nothing, okay, 75.
Mr. Adcock, I had some questions on the line 80 on the contractual expenses.
Yes.
In line with the instructional testing and scoring, we went from a budget of 100,000 down to 10,000.
Yes, that's correct. The reason for that is the explanation on the flip side of the page indicates the reduction in line 80 does have to do with instructional test scoring, and that is being rebudgeted down to line 80 for BOCES services, because we are now having BOCES do our instructional test scoring rather than the lion's share of our instructional test scoring being done by an outside consultant other than BOCES. Actually, a cost-effective way of doing our test scoring is through BOCES. So you see that line 80 is decreasing by 95,000, and line 84 is increasing by 84,000, as explained on the test.
Are we getting BOCES aid
Yes.
on the test scoring also? And what is that percentage of
It's
dollars?
approximately 40%.
40%?
Yes.
Has it been at that level for the last couple of years?
Yeah, BOCES level varies depending on the service from somewhere between 40 and 45% for our district.
Okay, so this is the gross cost,
Yes, it is.
not the net cost. Okay.
Mr. Adcock, on line 90, if you can just explain that to the community, that decrease, there, and to the board as well?
Absolutely. In meeting with Mrs. Castelli and the account clerk who manages the finances of the special ed office, basically the decrease in line 90 tuition special schools is as a result of, and that tuition in those lines would be for out-of-district placements. The reduction in that line is primarily due to the district bringing back more students to be serviced in-house in successful programs within our school district versus sending students out to out-of-district placements, whether they be other public schools or private schools. In conjunction with that, you see line 88 is increasing by $438,000. And that increase, again, due to that reason of bringing students in-house to be serviced here in Massapequa schools and to provide services here in Massapequa schools, that increase is primarily related to therapy services and other related services for students that have come back to Massapequa to be educated here versus an out-of-district placement.
So those services are therapy services they were given when they were out of district?
Well, the therapy services, the increase in line 80, yes, they were given out of district, and now we are bringing more students back, so we're not paying the private schools or the other public schools for the related services, but they're being delivered here. So, increase in the other one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How many students are we projecting to bring back to the district?
That would be something that, we have to ask Mrs. Costello as far as the exact number of students, how many have come back. I don't have a detail in front of me of that, but certainly we could provide that easily.
So those increased therapy services, those would all be contracted out with private agencies?
Yes,
We're not increasing it on staff?
that's correct. That's right.
Alan, on line 75 and 76, in regards to salaries, the percentage that increases is quite different than what our employees got including their increment. What else is in that line?
Sure. Let me start by saying, if you look at the FTEs in that line, last year in line 75, we had 229.1 FTEs. We actually reduced that line by 20 elementary teachers. Of those 20, we brought back seven of those teachers as a result of sections occurring for elementary sections occurring in April, June, and August after the budget was adopted. And then we added about 1.5 FTEs in the special area sections like phys ed, art, music, etc. So the increase that you're seeing is representative of a step increase, a normal 1% increase that's contractual, as well as bringing back, restoring to the line, 8.5 FTEs. So that's why you see it looking larger than the increase that you approved to be.
Mr. Adcock, I'm sorry, could you scroll up? We're only getting to line 74.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much.
No, I forgot to change the
That's
page.
okay,
Excuse me.
thank you.
Sure. So that is the salary K-12 one. That question was asked on.
Mr. Adcock, line 90, you already identified why there was that significant reduction. But is there actual any savings by bringing it in-house, or is that 896 just shifted into the cost of additional teachers?
Well, I certainly think from an instructional standpoint, there's value, because I believe the quality of the instruction here versus the out-of-district and the out-of-district placements is better. As far as savings goes, there is savings on the transportation side, in that the district doesn't need to transport, and commensurate with that, you'll see on the transportation end that we did reduce the transportation budget by a certain amount. So there is savings in the transportation area, and certainly I think the instruction is better here than out-of-district placement.
And I agree, I believe the instructor here is better. But the 896 savings that it's showing is actually just being shifted to another line item.
Well, certainly in bringing students back, we may already have classes, whether they be self-contained classes or et cetera, that may be able to take in additional students where that self-contained class may not have technically been, for lack of a better term, full. So, by doing that, in that particular scenario, if you bring a student or two that could be in that self-contained class, then you don't have to add an instructor because the class wasn't full, depending on the configuration of that class.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So my question would be,
That's been a format for a while, because it is better for the child and better for our budget both. Do we have any outsourcing at this time? Is there,
Well-
on a percentage basis, how many percentage students are not?
We are, if you look at line 90, we are anticipating next year to spend 1.9 million, 1.9 million, a little over that, in out-of-district placements. So certainly there would be some students that would still be in out-of-district placements. And again, those, for lack of a better term, arrangements, or those schools are chosen and determined through an individualized education plan and committee on special education. So we certainly would still have, based on the budget that we would adopt on April 24th, students in out-of-district placements.
Well, also the reason I asked is now that we are working on a space, and there will be available space, I'm hoping that it won't be long before we can accommodate all special ed children in-house as best we can. I mean, I certainly don't see a problem, but if needing some space, that should be attainable with the university. And again, just putting that out there, these figures show us the benefits, and I think the special ed administration can attest to the learning ability of children once they are in it. It's just an important issue. I want to stay focused on as we go into our space committee presentation, but this is ICONUS coming up for sure.
Currently, we have approximately 70 students in out-of-district placements. This is a function of the grid of special education. There will always be a percentage, however, of students that we are unable to meet their needs because of their significant disabilities.
Yeah, there's always that number.
There will always be that. Just to clarify, Mrs. Icons is correct. Right now, we have about 70 children who are placed in out-of-district schools because of their intensive needs. Over the past 4 years, we brought that number down from about 100. Not that 30 have been included directly into kids exit, kids come back, but in tandem with the development programs. So we have added classrooms at the elementary and secondary levels.
Thank you very much.
I have one more question on line 86.
Sure.
Is that a reduction?
Yes, let me, I should have brought that up in the beginning. Last year, we had 6.3 FTE clericals in the special ed area. We are actually, there's one clerical person that shifted from special ed to guidance. So 186 as far as FTEs is down by 1. And when we get to the page, it would be line 128 that is up by 1 clerical in guidance. So there's no net increase or decrease, it's just switching the position from one code to another. You're welcome.
Next page, 4.
I have a question on line 94 with the occupational education. Just if we could talk a bit about the program, the expansion, or are we reducing the future?
I know that Tom can do pretty well speaking to the program. Let me speak to the reduction there. It represents a retirement which was not replaced, a one FTE retirement that was not replaced. So that's why you see that there is a reduction, it's because of the position that was not replaced. Now, Tom will probably be able to explain the good things in that occupational.
There's always a push and tug back and forth between schools looking at developing programs in-house, if you will, with regards to OPED programs that will meet the needs of our students and their graduation requirements. At the same time, there are certain programs that are lifetime vocational. Will certainly be able to meet the needs of students better. So we'll, again, much like special ed side, we'll always have a population of students that those types of programs, students are better served in those kinds of programs, but our OPED program is continually evolving, this year particularly with regards to our computer program, ECX, and looking at our technology programs.
We don't anticipate any increases, any increased number of students within the program. We'll hold it flat.
No, ultimately, it always comes down to a matter of how students meet their graduation requirements, and our emphasis over the last several years has really been to have students attain regional diploma with advanced designation, which ultimately requires them to remain in the core subject areas as far as they're able to go. So we're seeing more students in lab sciences for 3 and 4 years. We're seeing more students in the rigorous math courses, and that's really where we'd like to see our students ultimately graduate with those kinds of credentials. For other students with other paths, these programs are available.
And they're important programs. Important paths. On the summer school, is that just a reclass to the BOCES once again?
Yes, in sorts. BOCES is now running our entire secondary summer school, and the provision that's left in line 106 really deals with the salaries for monitors and registrar as it pertains to the summer rec program, not teachers or instruction.
And again, you get the 8.
Yes.
About 40%.
Approximately 40%, yes. Comes back to us the following year in the form of BOCES.
I just have a quick question. While we're on the teachers line here, most of the teachers that were furloughed, is it my understanding that they are back now in some form? They're either teaching or they are filling in for these absences? Do we have anyone who's still out on furlough?
Well, certainly there have been, as a result of leave replacements, as well as having to bring back some elementary sections. As I previously mentioned, yes, there have been a number of teachers that were excess that have come back, but I don't believe they've all come back.
Fair enough.
That's right.
Now, with the incentive, do we know what the numbers are of teachers who will be retiring so that we can bring more teachers back?
We currently have received 9 retirements with regard to teachers.
So it's 9 as of today.
Yes.
So that will open up 9
Correct.
Now, they also, just so it's clear in my mind, the furloughed teachers hold that position, a tentative position, for
They may be on
a decade
a
or
preferred
7 years.
eligible list.
I'm sorry?
They're on what's called a preferred eligible list.
Mr. Bennett, all of our excess teachers have 7 years on the preferred eligible list. So anytime we have a leave placement over 5 months or longer, or a probationary position that's new, they are recalled by the district and they have the option to return or not. Many of our secondary teachers, although we're not recalled to come back, but happy to say that they were able to get jobs elsewhere, which we were talking about today with some of the administrators. Although we missed some, many of our teachers who didn't come back were able to get jobs elsewhere, so that was good news.
But as long as we know they're out of the and I know that you are on that, and, thank you.
Mr. Adcock, can you please go over lines 123, 124, and 125, and how it relates to our technology initiatives?
Yes, I'm actually going to let Mr. Schilling take the lead on this, but most of the increase that you see is due to the implementation of the one-to-one initiative that Mr. Schilling has presented in the board meeting that he'll be able to explain in more detail again.
Right, actually, specific to proposing to implement a one-to-one initiative beginning in grade 7 and 8 next year, lines 122, 124, and 126 specifically hold certain items inside of them that would help to implement that kind of initiative beginning in grades 7, 8, and 9 next year. And that's why you see dollar figures that might be a little above we would normally see in those very specific lines. It's equipment, supplies, and books.
Okay. Would you explain how that all gets calculated in regard to state aid and things like that, so the community has an idea of what happens when we have an expenditure of this sort on the budget, and when we could see the benefits of doing it?
Sure. Specifically to line 126 with BOCES, back in 2009, before history, the board took part in an initiative to replace a lot of our technology equipment, and we did it in partnership with NASA BOCES, and that's important because, like most BOCES lines, there is a benefit of aid that comes along with those expenditures. So if we spend a certain amount of dollars in BOCES cooperative this particular year, a certain percentage of those dollars come back to you in the following school year. For technology types of services, it's either 42% or 45%, depending on if it's an instructional program or a managerial program. So working in partnership with the business office and then with the Board of Ed's support, we funnel as many equipment purchases and technology initiatives through BOCES as is practicable, so that we can take advantage of those kinds of aid purchases. Even though you see dollars in the equipment lines, what happens oftentimes is we keep the monies there for equipment types of properties, because every once in a while you can come across a program or an initiative that just doesn't suit itself to be able to run through a BOCES line. So it's invaluable to have it in there. However, it is very common, I did it over the last 3 years straight, where a lot of that equipment money is transferred into BOCES lines towards the end of the school year, once we're able to flesh that out. So anytime we have those kinds of initiatives, we do run through there. So it helps you provide a funding stream for future years as you go by. Now that funding stream you're not going to see in these lines 120 through 126 because that's considered revenue. So when Mr. Adcock gets to the revenue side of the budget and talks about state aid, that's where you would see those additional dollars that were generated by these BOCES expenditures come in. And that helps us in turn fund future initiatives as we move forward and replacement of equipment as it comes into play.
Now, that initiative itself,
Those three bucket
lines that you just mentioned,
122,
124 and 126,
Correct.
okay.
on line 123, can you tell me or give us an idea of what that?
Sure, that's the contractual expense line. And the reason why you see a little bump in there is that we have a number of desktop computers that are coming off of their warranty in this school year. However, they still have enough life left there that we're not ready to replace them yet. But we need to have a certain amount of allocation, contractual expenditures to be ready for repair of those, so we have to send them out. So, because normally it would be on the warranty, it would be a warranty coverage, but since the warranty's ended, I've got to cover that somewhere, so that's where that additional dollar figure comes
Okay, thank you.
in. You're welcome.
Something that we should be mindful of as we look at the computer-assisted instruction budget is that if you look at the standard and organizations and how much they spend with regard to technology, industry-wide, it's about 5% of an organization's budget should be spent on technology. I believe with regard to Massapequa, we're spending about 2.5%, 2.4% on technology. So we're considerably below, although our technology in our schools is at this level, we're considerably below what private industry is being as a benchmark for spending on technology with the organization.
And just to add in, that number is not even just for private industry. Ken Wagner himself, who's the Assistant Commissioner for Education in New York, has also noted that 5% is good rule of thumb for school districts moving forward. We're very lean in that regard. I'm not going to be looking for asking you to double our technology line somewhere. We do very nicely with what you provide us, and we're happy to have it.
Mr. Hancock, I have a question. Yeah, the computer-assisted instructional, this is it's a mixed bag of items. How are we actually going to purchase the technology that we're going to maintain next year?
So with regard to the one-to-one initiative, that technology would be purchased through National BOCES, through either state contract or a BOCES contract. And so once that technology purchase gets made, let's say there's an amount that gets purchased in the 2014-15 school year, whatever the expenditures associated with that purchase through BOCES generates approximately 42 to 45% aid, which the district will receive the following year, which then we will be able to take that aid and then reinvest it back into technology. It's actually been cited by the comptroller's office, and there was an article in Newsday several years ago, that it's a very efficient way for school districts to purchase technology initially and then continue to replenish technology by the revenue stream that expenditure generates in the form of OCD. So we did this about 5 years ago when we were replacing desktop computers, and with this one-to-one initiative, a Chromebook for each secondary student, it's an efficient way of implementing that initiative.
I have a question on the purchases, especially the large ticket items with the technology. I know we're getting 40% BOCES aid, but the actual prices, we're budgeting gross, and we're actually paying net over a certain amount of years. Do we know that the purchase price, what are you doing in terms of due diligence to check the actual price compared to what we're getting with BOCES if we were privately or under the state contract?
Well, one of the things that the purchase is actually, the purchase is being made either off a state contract or a BOCES contract, and what we're doing is we're actually running the initiative through BOCES. They're the ones that are actually providing us with the computers at the price of a state contract or a BOCES contract. Now, we could also choose, if we wanted to not run the purchase through National BOCES and buy it independently off state contract ourselves, and not have BOCES involved in running it through one of their cooperative programs. And in that scenario, we pay the same price, thereabouts, but we would not get the aid. The only differential there is a management fee that goes.
Right, I was just
that
gonna
goes
mention
to charges, I don't want to mislead it, there is a management fee which ranges about 10%.
It depends on how much I can negotiate it. You figure you're gonna be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 13 to 15% on a management fee that they tack onto the top of whatever the contracted cost was. But that, because with BOCES, you can't just buy equipment, you buy a service, you buy a package. So that 15% provides, is then providing a service to us in addition to coming to equipment. That could be assistance with the setup of the equipment, the installation of the equipment, the going through the purchasing process and the bidding and the RFPs, which is very time consuming and expensive. And if we had to do that on our own, would be very prohibitive. So when BOCES does it for that 15%, it's very worth it. Even with that 15% overhead, you're still netting out with the 43% aid, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 25% as an actual net, which is valuable. And we do take advantage of the services that they provide for that 15%.
Just one concern that I have, with the aid that we're getting, the 40%. If something happens within the state budget, and it's very possible the aid numbers go up and down. In fact, we just barely squeak a little bit more aid in the proposed governor's budget. If that 40% is decreased or eliminated, what is our ability to exit out of the contract? And we're so far along in the contract, we have an exit clause if that happens.
What I've been able to do for the last 3+ years is, for the greatest extent possible, the programs that we run with BOCES are done on what's called an LOI, which is a letter of intent, which means it's a one-shot, one-program kind of initiative that doesn't go year to year. We only have very few types of programs that are multi-year contracts. And those, when you do have to let the contract flesh out before you can do them, but those would be things that we would never consider pulling out of. For example, our fiber optic lease and our internet provisions, which are very favorable right now. Regarding your point, which is a very good one on, nothing would stay that is a certain, and, they do have those kinds of threats every once in a while. However, when you think about BOCES in and of itself and the incentive to work through BOCES, it feeds very closely into what Albany regularly encourages us to do, and that is to work cooperatively with our neighboring districts and our BOCES to help reduce costs. Because that way you're not isolated, you're working yourself into an island where I'm bidding out something and doing an RFP and of myself, and the district 2 doors down is doing the same thing, and so is the guy across the county. And that's a waste, because we're all basically trying to do the same thing. And that's exactly what BOCES does. And it feeds right into that notion of work cooperatively and reduce your costs. And here's an incentive from the state for you to do just that. So to pull that away would really be almost like shooting themselves in the foot with that argument.
How many years have we been doing technology? I would say it's probably about a dozen years now that we have been getting aid back in that same range. It hasn't really fluctuated too much between 42–45%.
It hasn't. It's been, for at least the last 10 to 12 years, where over that period of time, we have absolutely tried to maximize the amount of purchases that we've made through BOCES to avail ourselves of that aid. And Bob is right on target. Certainly one of the initiatives of New York State, whether it be the State Education Department or the Governor's Office, is to promote shared services among school districts within the county or within the state. And that's what the BOCES initiative actually does, to share the service. So this year, although from time to time we may hear from the state as the governor's budget initially comes out, or some deliberations in either the Senate or the Assembly, that they may be cutting BOCES aid. We've heard none of that in the last couple of years. And as far as I know right now, the state is touting that they have a $6 billion windfall. So they seem to be in a much better position than they were 4 or 5 years ago.
Just not to digress, I just wanted to, summer school, like, back a few pages, you don't have to go to it. Is that primarily self-funding with the out-of-district students that we get? Is that only self-funded, or is it?
It's not self-funded. We are limited for our own students, we're in the secondary program, for our own students, we are limited by state law to charging $3 for our own students. Now, certainly, we do take out-of-district students, and we do charge significantly more, in the hundreds of dollars, for an out-of-district student to come to Massapequa for summer school. But even with that, certainly, we make it available to our own students first. For any seats that we have open, we'll make it available to out-of-district students at a significant tuition rate, but it's not a self-supporting program.
I realize it's not a problem in this budget right now, but what I'm looking at is, can you tell me the percentage of out-of-district students that we are getting in? And I believe the board has the control of those students, is that right?
Yes,
For the out-of-district students?
yes.
Out-of-students who cannot, there is,
There's a $3 fee, that's state.
but can you tell me what the out-of-district students might be, basically, or just off the cuff, what the percentage might be?
I'll take a stab in the dark. I want to say in the $500, $600, $700 range for a course.
But I'm saying, I don't believe we should have.
It's also a
About
program,
$550.
I'm sorry?
$550 per course for an out-of-district student.
that's also a program that's been that, for the last 4 years now, we have utilized BOCES in order to provide the district with a revenue stream. So the entire program, our expenditures as a district, in terms of salaries for our teachers, our clerical, et cetera, we utilize the BOCES program, so it's subsidized each year. But as Mr. Adcock said, it's not a self-sustaining program, but we do have a significant portion of percentage of students that are out of district, students from our neighboring districts. And obviously, particularly last year, as Massapequa maintained a secondary summer school program, we saw across the island, certainly in our local areas, districts that were unable to sustain summer school programs. So we did take in a few more students than we had in the past.
Our students are also able to advance in summer school, or is it only to make up for?
There are several, well, obviously, they're able to take a course that they were not successful in.
Right.
But there were certain opportunities that were afforded to our students where they take a health course in order to get a step ahead. But that's actually one of the reasons for our curriculum initiatives back in November. We called opening the options, particularly at Burner Middle School, where our students will now be able to take math, music and art, and in addition, ECS.
So this we're going to break the year.
So we're looking to minimize the need for students to have to look at things like summer school in order to either get a semester ahead or take care of a half-credit course like that in a summer school program.
Would it be prudent, and are we considering ever having AP courses during some time? I don't mean to put you on the spot, I'm just saying, if it hasn't been considered, that's fine, and maybe we can talk about it.
I mean, there's a significant level of curriculum.
Just a too short a period.
Sure. I mean, many teachers who work in our summer school program will tell you, in order to really assist the student, and particularly on the Regents level, just to help them get credit for a particular course and get through a Regents assessment in the 26 or 27 instructional days is extremely difficult. So it's really a remedial program, so we're not be right there.
It's just a thought on the subject.
I have one question, back on the summer school. Say you charge the
or is part of that paid privately by the community?
No, that rate for our district student is actually set by the school district. It's set by us.
Okay.
We set that rate. And instead of $550, we could make it $1,500, but I'm saying, we set that rate. So we look at other, summer schools throughout the county to determine, what is the going rate for an out-of-district student coming in for a summer school, and we set the rate pretty much commensurate on some data that we have.
Okay, you build the district directly?
No.
Oh, the parent?
The parent.
Totally by the
Yeah,
parent?
absolutely.
Okay, the district doesn't bear.
That's right. It's paid for by the parent of the, out-of-district student.
And this is Brian, that he was increased last year.
Okay, thank you.
Line 133. That line, in doing some analysis, that line historically has been short and considered under budgeted as a result of substitute school nurses that we do use for a variety of reasons, whether they be field trips where a student may require a nurse or other types of events where substitute nurses are required. So most of the increase in that line, to the extent of 66,000, and it is in the explanation, is due to putting a provision there for the substitute nurses that the school district must hire, which we had not put a budgeted provision in the past. However, we have year to year, we do use substitute nurses. Various reasons.
That account for decrease on 138.
Yeah, there's no decrease in the FTE, but I believe it has to do with being paid under a grant versus the psychologist being paid through the general fund.
Is that something that happens every year?
It can be sporadic depending on, with regard to grant money, how that grant money is utilized to reduce expenses within the budget.
Okay.
Do we have enough psychologists and social workers?
I would say yes. I
Very
think
well
we,
staffed.
Our team of psychologists across the district are very strong. We actually just brought on a new psychologist for this school year to help specifically support our life skills programs at Burner Middle School and Matthew High School. So we're actually very fortunate, very strong psychological team.
And social workers?
And social workers as well.
Okay.
Of course, at the elementary level, we're supported by ES counseling agency, and at the secondary level, we have social workers at each of our secondary levels.
More and more, we have available, for counseling for the students. I have a question on line 145. Are we increasing positions on the coaches and the staff?
I'm not aware of an increase in positions. The increase that you see there is contractual. But as far as numbers go, there's no increase. It's throughout the entire instruction budget, and maybe I didn't mention this up front, is that the budget that you have in front of you represents all of the current programs, all of the programs that we're currently running, being rolled forward into next year. So there is no decrease in level of program. It is the current program representative of being moved into 2014-15 school year.
Are we raising any of the stipends, or, this includes an increase? This is for chaperones and,
Yes, a contractual increase.
and that's all for faculty,
Coaches, yes.
and the chaperones?
How many number, combine the non and instructional, what percentage do you increase will be this year?
Sure. Actually, since the February 6th, we've done a considerable amount of work with regard to the instructional budget, and certainly there is an impact to the general support side. We're still currently in the process of creating our staffing model, but as we stand right now, the budget-to-budget increase, the entire budget is just a shade over 2%. And the tax cap that was filed with the New York State Comptroller's Office is 2.34%. And we'll talk about and discuss in greater detail the tax cap and the revenue streams funding the school district on March 20th.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Eckroth, that includes the board's review, if you stand by for a minute.